and welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah. I filmed almost this entire video with the cord of my microphone right in front of the camera lens. So round two, here we go. Today we are going to be talking about Loathe to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. If you have been around the channel for a while, you know that this is the third Ali Hazelwood book that I have read within like the last 3 months. And I think at this point I just need a little bit of a break from this world. Will I probably read her 2 new books that she has coming out? Yeah, I probably will, because they're quick, fun romance books. But I've kind of noticed some patterns and I think I just need a little bit of a break. So earlier this year I read The Love Hypothesis, and I absolutely loved the main character. I loved the story. It was super fun. And then on a trip to Barnes & Noble, I bought Love on the Brain and Loathe to Love You. And over the last like 2 months or so have been reading both of those books. Love on the Brain was cute. I definitely preferred The Love Hypothesis more. And some of the issues that I had with Love on the Brain were just the characters were really obsessed with something, and it kind of just made the story a little repetitive and a little bit boring at times. But it was still a cute read. Let's go ahead and get into a spoiler-free summary, and then I'll get into some spoilers, some of my thoughts on these 3 short stories, and kind of share a little bit about why I think I'm ready for a break. As I said, this is a collection of 3 short stories. They follow 3 best friends, Mara, Sadie, and Hannah, as they are kind of, they met in grad school and now they're kind of out into the world with their jobs, kind of like, you know, in that getting started part of their like career. And all 3 of them end up meeting tall, broad, grumpy men. And that's it. That's the plot of all 3 of these books. Now, I did like that they were short stories because everything went by very, very quickly. It was easy to read. The plot moved along at a good pace. I mean, it's not a big book to begin with, and I think each of the short stories was maybe like 100 to 120 pages, so they really weren't long, and I was able to finish it relatively quickly. They were just all extremely similar. So let's go ahead and get into each of the individual stories. The first story was called Under One Roof, and that was about Mara and Liam, which is this couple right here. Mara was very close with her advisor when she was in college, and her advisor has recently passed away and left her something in her will, and that something is half of a house in the Washington, D.C. area. Now, Mara has just gotten a position with the EPA, which is her dream job. Mara definitely needs this house. She's a recent grad student. She's just gotten this position in her like dream area. And she needs a place to live. So she learns that her advisor's nephew, Liam, also owns half of the house. And so she shows up to try to convince him that she needs to stay there at least for a little while to save some money. Of course, he offers to buy her out multiple times, but no luck. Now, Mara's very, you know, she works for the EPA, so she's very concerned about the health of the environment. Liam is a lawyer for a big corporate company that is not quite as considerate of the environment. And so just the fact that they're now living in this house together and they don't want to be, and also they have kind of different career paths, leads to a lot of conflict. And eventually they spend more time together, those feelings start to change, and one day Liam hears Mara telling her 2 best friends what she thinks of him, which is not that she hates him anymore, and then that ends up leading to a relationship for them. So that's pretty much it for Under One Roof. The main conflict, other than Liam and Mara not really getting along, the main conflict was kind of the fact that Liam worked for this big corporate company, that he didn't agree with a lot of their decisions, but he was kind of protecting the people that worked for him, because if he wasn't there to stick up for them, who would do that. And Mara was kind of stuck in this environment where she wasn't really valued, even though she had advanced degrees and had a lot of knowledge about the projects that her team was working on. And then a leadership position becomes available and she applies for it, but is concerned that because of her lack of experience, she might not get that position. So those are kind of the main conflicts within the story. Very realistic conflicts, for sure. I mean, those are definitely things that could happen. I do kind of wish that every once in a while there'd be something a little more dramatic that also makes sense. So the second story in Loathe to Love You is called Stuck With You, and that follows these two lovebirds down here, Sadie and Eric. Take the plot of the first story, and instead of being lawyers, change them to like engineers and architects. And the plot's pretty much the same for the most part. So Sadie works for this architectural firm that is very environmentally friendly. You know, they make a lot of green decisions when they are working on projects. It's a very small firm. And on a morning before her pitch meeting, she meets Eric, who is a partner at, I believe it's called ProBuild, this very large architectural firm that has consistently tried to buy out the company that Sadie works for. They hit it off almost immediately, have breakfast together, have dinner together, go on, like they have like a full 24 hours together. And then Sadie ends up losing a pitch. The client that she was trying to get ends up picking ProBuild for almost the same project that she had proposed to them. So Sadie's boss kind of suggests that Eric probably used her to get information and then make that same pitch to the client so that they could get the work rather than Sadie's company. At which point she basically ghosts him for like 3 weeks until they get stuck in an elevator together. And with nothing else to do other than sit in an elevator, they end up talking and realizing that it was all just a misunderstanding. Like Eric had looked up her graduate thesis. He had looked up some of the other articles that she'd written and passed it along to other people in his firm because he valued her work and he thought that they could all learn something from it. And he realizes that that probably was reflected in the pitch that they gave to that client, but he wasn't using her specifically for that information. And then they are able to rekindle that romance once they both realize that they kind of jumped to conclusions a little bit rather than getting all of the information first. So the last story in Loathe to Love You is called Below Zero, and that features these guys right here, Hannah and Ian. As a project in grad school, Hannah had to interview somebody in her dream career field. So Mara said she had a cousin-ish. They're like distantly related, but they don't actually know each other very well, who Hannah could interview, and they hit it off. Hannah and Ian meet up so that she can ask him a couple of questions about his work with NASA. They hit it off pretty quickly. Things escalate during that interview process, and then they don't see each other again for like 4 or 5 years. He leaves for wherever he needs to go. I think he needs to go back to Houston, I'm not sure. And Hannah continues on in her studies and eventually gets a job working at NASA and ends up in like the same, not in the same department as Ian, but like on his old team. He is now advanced. But Hannah writes a proposal for a project that she would, for like a study that she would like to do. And Ian vetoes it so that it gets no funding, which of course means that she is just absolutely furious at him, repeatedly says that she hates him. And he ends up telling her that the reason he vetoed the project is because it was too dangerous for her to do, and he was just concerned about it. However, her boss pushed the project along, found funding elsewhere, and she was off to Norway to take this rover out into very snowy, cold conditions in the middle of Norway. When she wrote the project proposal, it was for her and somebody else to go out and collect data with this rover. However, they couldn't fund another person, so she ends up doing it herself. She isn't really looking where she's going, and she ends up falling into this like pit or crevasse. I don't know how to say the word crevasse, and every time I say it, all I can think of is Guillermo saying cacasse from What We Do in the Shadows. I'm just gonna stick with pit. She falls in this pit, this like snowy, or like off the side of a cliff, sprains her ankle and can't get back up. And her boss says, hey, the snowstorm's too bad. We can't send anybody out there. Just try your best to survive for the next like 24 hours. Ian says, hey, I'm coming out to get you. So he comes out to rescue her, takes her back onto his like fishing boat. And at that point she realizes that he was not part of a rescue team that was sent. He just came on his own. And so he had used his vacation time to take a vacation to Norway in the middle of winter, because he was really concerned about Hannah's project, and he wanted to be nearby in case things went wrong, which they did. And he also tells her that either 2 employees were injured, or I think it was injured. I don't think they died. I can't remember. But there have been incidents with her boss in the past, and the evidence wasn't clear enough to show that it was his fault. Plus, they all signed waivers whenever they were joining this team that was going out into Norway. So he just really didn't trust this guy and wanted to be there in case something happened, which it did. Hannah had kind of been just kind of shutting Ian down because she didn't really do relationships, because she didn't think people liked to be around her. From her experience, they didn't really enjoy her company after a time, and so she thought Ian would be the same, and after a couple of times together, he would just not want to be around her anymore, which was very far from the actual truth. And of course, at the end of the book, they end up in a relationship together. So one of the things that I had mentioned earlier is kind of the realistic conflicts, but they're kind of just very mellow. I think I wanted a little more adventure, and I'm glad I got that with Hannah's story. Like, still something realistic. I would imagine NASA scientists could potentially get injured when they're out in the field, especially if it's in the middle of Norway in the winter in a snowstorm. I mean, I would think that that could happen. And I know that these aren't like adventure books per se, but I think I would have liked a little more adventure. So I'm kind of glad to have gotten that with Hannah's story. At the end of this book, there was a bonus chapter where we got to see just a little bit of what's going on in all of their lives now that everyone is together. They're either married or potentially getting engaged. So we got a little more of a glimpse into their lives after the stories have ended. So as I said, like, quick, fun romance reads, kind of repetitive in how the characters are written and some of the plot points. Will I probably read her other books? Yeah, I probably will. But I think I just need a break. I need something that kind of deviates from this pattern. So I think I'll be reading some other things in the next couple of weeks. But anyway, I do still recommend it if you're a fan of romance, if you're a fan of Ali Hazelwood, and any of her other writing. Definitely check this one out and let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.